Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Today we have Jane shared about the end-to-end demos on Microsoft MSLab. So stay tuned, all right? And over to you, Jane.
All right, so let me start sharing here. Okay, firstly, apologies for the last week thing, right? So unfortunately, we had a downtime in Austin because of which it was kind of a last minute, and because of which I couldn't do the live demo as much as I wanted to. But here we are back with the lab stuff that's going on. So hopefully, we can get this cracking right away. Okay, wait a minute. Let me stop sharing and reshare it again. Sometimes Teams kind of blocks my presentation completely. Just give me a minute. Give me a second. Yeah. So let me try.
Because it's too powerful.
Yeah. So sometimes, that banner on the top that says sharing, it completely occupies my screen. So I can't even click on my remote desktop windows.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't know. Okay, this time it disappeared. All right, great. Okay, can you guys all see my screen here?
Yes.
You can see a browser session.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Okay, just to kind of recap, right? I don't want. I'll not spend much time on this, but the prerequisites for deploying through MSLab, basically, you need these ISOs, which are very important. Basically, the Azure Stack HCI operating system. And you'd also need the Windows Server operating system because you need to create a domain controller. And you also need, you would also need a core OS with, where we actually go and deploy your Windows Admin Center gateway. And then you need the management system through which you're going to launch your Windows Admin Center and run all of your scripts, which I'm going to show right now. Okay. And in addition to that, you would also need your MSLab scripts. And this particular GitHub page, I know this has already been shared, but this particular GitHub page kind of gives you the links for the desired ISOs that you can download from. Either it could be MSDN, Eval Center, the Azure Stack HCI operating system 21H2, and the MSLab, all of which you can download. Okay. So once you have downloaded that, what you do is you go and create something known as a temp folder. Okay, so maybe, you can name whatever folder that you want, but in my case, I would do something like this. I would create first thing known as, master folder. Basically, if I look through, it has my MSD, the 5 scripts that I need, which are downloaded from MSLab, and the ISOs, which I said, right? So the Azure Stack HCI OS and the Windows Server. All right. Now, once I have this, then it's like a step-by-step, right? So first thing is, this is where you can actually get all of this downloaded as well. For example, running of the prerequisite step. So prerequisite step basically helps you download all your scripts, all your files. So let me run this real quick. Okay. All right. So it automatically. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Before you go further, can you switch back to your folder where your ISO are sitting?
Sure.
The files in the ISO, you
okay,
can rename them to whatever you want, right? Essentially.
Sorry, let me go back to this. Yeah, you're saying, yeah, the ISO.
Yeah, you can rename it to whatever.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can rename it to anything that you want.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just that once you run the prerequisites script, right? That's the next step is to create parent disks.
Yep.
Right. In fact, when you download MSLab, it actually tells you 1_2_3_. So it tells you what is the first script to run, second script to run, third script. The reason I've just modified this is because it's, I know exactly the step that is required to run. But, if you're new to this, when you download your MSLab scripts, it tells you 1_prereq, 2_ create parent disks, 3 underscore deploy, and 4 underscore cleanup, which is your last step.
Okay.
Okay, so something like that. Okay, it's easier to kind of run through that. That's not an issue. Okay, so what we'll do is we will just quickly run the prerequisite step. So basically, prerequisite step script, basically what it does is it preps your environment. So it checks whether you have the right PowerShell privileges, and it needs to be signed and all of that. Basic PowerShell commands that you need. If it is not available, it will download it. So you will see that when I run this script. Okay. So prerequisite is the first thing that you do. Okay. So as you can see, it'll restart from my admin credential. So I think it skipped, as you can see, some of the steps, right? Because in my environment, it's already downloaded. Let's say if it is a brand new environment, it actually downloads this and starts installing. Okay, so it deploys the prerequisite modules. Now these modules are needed for the MSLab scripts to run. Okay, so for instance, the DHCP server module, all of this is like, these are like, SDKs that it basically downloads and uses them when it's trying to provision a DHCP server, for instance, right? Because you would need a DHCP server when you deploy your domain controller.
Would it be able to work if, let's say, for example, there's a internet connection problem? Would it allow you to rerun it again?
Yeah, that's a little tricky. We haven't tested where there is no internet connection, because it does require you to download some of the modules directly from internet if it doesn't exist, right? If not, I think we'll have to, so this is where what I do is, this is a one-step process, right? So basically you need these modules to be, let's say if you're connected, it could be from your laptop or whatever. As long as any system that has connectivity, you download these. And once you download, so as you can see, my system is prepped now. Then I would, it'll basically, have these scripts already downloaded. So I just copy the script over. But then again, I'll tell you. So there's a trick here. So I'll go one step at a time. I think that'll answer your question. Because I think otherwise it'll probably confuse the audience. Okay, so we'll revisit your question again.
Okay.
But in a nutshell, you would need internet connection, preferably, because we don't know. So I'll tell you one of the challenges, right? People who are deploying Azure Stack HCI definitely needs internet connection. If it's Windows Server, then it works in a dark side. So ideally, we are talking about connected mode only.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So once as you can see, right? So it actually created parent disks folder, and it also created a temp folder. So the temp folder basically, downloads some of the tools that you would need to, let's say, for instance, mount an ISO, to convert from your VHD to VHDX file, and all of that, right? And you also need to convert your ISO file into VHDX and so on, right? So basically, it's a tools thing that it temporarily downloads. And then the parent disks is where you actually, I'll run through this. So it's a bunch of scripts that you need to, after you have created, you've done the prerequisites, you need to create a VM, the VHD file and so on. That's when you come here. I'll come back to this again later. All right. So basically, it adds these two folders. Just keep in mind.
Sorry, just a short question, right? Can we run this environment in a nested environment itself there, or you need it to run on a?
Yes, this is purely designed for nested environments.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you.
You can also do it in a in a traditional hardware kind of environment, but then it works today, as far as I know, only on Dell platforms. Okay, but otherwise, MSLab is designed to work on nested platforms only. Right. So it's like this, right? So this is for customers who are trying to do a POC. This is for people who want to just build a lab and they keep destroying over and over again. So this is for such people. It is not really meant for production kind of a deployment. Production kind of a deployment, I would generally associate with traditional way of deploying. You have if you go with Dell, you have the deployment services attached to the service queue. So which means you're covered there. But if you're doing it on your own, I think it's not a preferred choice using the MSLab. Okay. All right. So now, so once prerequisite step is done, that's when you go to the next step. So this is where you will be actually creating the VHD files for the ISOs. So we need the VHD file for both the ISOs here. So this script helps you create that parent disk, right? So right click and say run PowerShell. Okay. Yes. All right. So basically, this is for this is for the MSLab developers. If you want to send information about the telemetry data and stuff like that, is for their input. So basically it'll start if to check Hyper-V is installed. See, as you can see, right? So immediately it asks me, hey, please select the ISO image, which is either Windows Server 2016, 2022, or whatever. So in my case, I have already that particular ISO downloaded. So what I do is I just go to JY-temp, go to ISO, and select this one, not the Azure Stack HCI OS, okay? Because it's asking for either it's a 2022 or 2019 or 2016, okay? Okay, now this is so this is where it asks you for MSUs, right? Now, in my case, I haven't downloaded that MSU, okay? But you can download an MSU right from here. So maybe I can just go here and go to this folder, go to parent disk. So there's a script that says download latest cumulative updates. There's a Microsoft cumulative updates. So you just run this. It basically runs the Microsoft cumulative updates that you would need for your Windows Server 2022 and also for Azure Stack HCI 21H2. Okay, so let's try running that now. Okay, so as you can see, where's the path? Just leave it as it is, because wherever you are running the script from, it defaults to that particular folder. So which means it's going to download your MSUs, the Microsoft cumulative updates, server updates into this folder. That's what it's trying to say. Okay. So do you want to download the preview updates? I would say no, because I want to make sure that whatever I download is the production ready one. So like I said, so this is the MSU for 21H2 and Windows Server 2022. So I select that and click OK. This shouldn't take much time. Okay, that's it. So if you go here now under JY-temp, if I go into parent disk, remember this folder was not there. So this is the new folder. It got added. Now, as you can see, the MSUs the Windows updates are downloaded here. Okay, so now what I do is I will point to that MSU because that was the script is asking me for that MSU. So I would go into parent disks, Azure Stack HCI, this particular one, point to this. That's it. Minimize this. All right, now this is the one. It's going to take some time, right? It needs to create a VHD file for the two operating system so for the first operating system that we're talking about. And once this is complete, so this is going to go on for a long time, right? Generally, this creation is going to take about roughly I think out of my experience, probably about 1 hour or 1 hour, 10 minutes, depending on, because you need to create a VHD file for the two ISOs. One is a Windows server and then the Azure Stack HCI. Okay, so the Windows server is already getting created here, as you can see. Right now, I would suggest not to change this name because internally the scripts are referring to this VHD file name. Right, so don't change this. Just leave it as it is. Okay, so this is going to take a long time. So maybe I can, let me know if there are any questions. Because there's no point sitting through this script because it's going to take a long time to prepare this image.
Jayan.
Yep.
During one of the prompts, it asks you for the Windows Server ISO, but I don't see the prompt that asks you for the Azure Stack HCI ISO.
Correct. Good question. So that is where after this step, what's going to happen? Let me just minimize this. Let me go into this folder because this is our working folder where I've been trying to demo. If you go into parent disks, so basically it is going to create. So this one, it's currently being created. It's not renamed yet, right? Eventually, when the script completes, you will have this as renamed as Windows Server _g2.vhdx. Okay. Now, after you have, after the script is complete, then you're supposed to come here and click on Create Parent Disk. And this is where, for example, if you just run this. All right, so can you see this now? So now it is asking you for the Azure Stack HCI 21H2. So this is a script that basically that you would need to point your the Azure Stack HCI ISO. So you provide this ISO from this script. Okay. Now I know this is very confusing. You're like, Jen, you're telling me to run script here, and then you're asking me to run the script from parent disk. Yeah, well, it's actually, once you get used to this, you'll actually run through this, because for me, it's become so, after deploying it many times, it's become a practice. But we have a good documentation right here just to kind of guide you every step that you need to do.
Got it.
Does that answer your question, Noel?
Yep. So it's
okay.
a different script.
It is a different script. It's not the same script that you do. So why did they provide the script external, right? So tomorrow, let's say you have 22H2.
Yep.
Right? And you want to prep 22H2. So what you can do is you use that as a tooling script and run that script and point to your 22H2 ISO, and then run the same script, and you will have another VHDX file created.
Awesome.
Okay. So let me do one thing. So let me cancel this out because it's there's no point sitting ducks here. So okay. So on this, any other questions? I'm happy to take it up. Okay, this is don't get me wrong here. This is just one of the operations. So it's basically going to run through multiple iterations of doing everything and finally prepping the image. Okay, so if I do a Control-C, kill all the process, it's going to end up in a very stale state. So that's something that we don't want to do, but generally we will allow it to continue. But let's say something happens. Yeah, sorry. Was there a question?
I'm just trying to understand the thing, right? When you're running the script to create the server parent disk, right? It's basically creating the VHDX image file while also installing the OS in it directly, or it's just creating the VHDX files?
Not yet. We're not deploying the OS set. So remember the first step. So let me just go here again. Yeah, so let me answer that question. So first step, basically, you download all the scripts, correct? Once you download the script, the first one is a prerequisite step where you download your ISO files and you prep your environment with the required PowerShell modules. Okay. Right. The second step is create parent disks, where you actually are trying to create the VHDX file for the Windows server that you're going to deploy it as a domain controller and also as a Windows Admin Center gateway and then management system.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, and the third step is basically to create that parent disks. So that's under parent disks here, where you create a VHDX file for the Azure Stack HCI operating system.
That's where you link the ISO to it, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Right,
So
right,
once you're done with that, then the next step is to basically deploy. That is where, to your question, when will I deploy an operating system? This is when you will deploy an operating system. After all these steps, right? Come here, right-click, deploy. Then you will have the required VHDX files. You will have the required tools, and that will automatically start running the script for prepping your environment while deploying the VMs. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. But
okay.
Just by creating the VHD's environments itself is taking 1 hour plus to create it.
Yeah, that's why it's a one-time effort. So remember, your Windows ISOs and Azure Stack HCI ISOs are not going to be changing frequently, right? It's just once in a year. The HCI OS is going to be prepped, right? So it's just a one-time activity. Once you have downloaded that, what I would do is, once you have all the, so let me go here. So once you have gone through prerequisite step, and then create parent disk step, and then this step, which is create parent disk to create a parent disk for Azure Stack HCI OS, then you will end up with this thing. So this is what I say. Yeah, you will end up with this folder. Okay, so basically, if you go into this folder, can you see this? It's got Azure Stack HCI 21H2 VHDX file. It's got the tools that is required to run, like mount ISOs and everything, mount image and everything. And you have the Windows 2022 desktop OS with the VHDX file. Then you have the Windows 2022 core for your Windows Admin Center gateway. Okay, so it's a one-time effort. So what you do from next time onwards is just, since you have, that's why I've created this as JY master parent disk. What I do is just copy, just paste it again, okay, and rename this folder according to my choice. So you don't have to go through this iteration over and over again. It's just a one-time effort. Right? You can straight away jump into deploy script.
Just curious, Jane.
Yep.
Any reason why when Jerome was creating this, right, he didn't change the name of the script inside the other folder? Because there's two script called create parent disk. Right.
Oh, okay. So, okay. You mean there is create parent disks under the main folder, and there's create parent disks under the subfolder. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
It's a good question. Maybe yeah. So you can rename the folder. It doesn't hurt, right? Sorry, you can rename the script. It doesn't hurt.
Okay. It's just that,
if you want.
Yeah, it's less confusing if the script was a bit more descriptive. I think if you leave the first one as create parent disk, and that's referring to Windows Server, maybe you can just call it create Windows Server parent disk, and then the other one you can just call it create Azure Stack HCI. In short, right?
Yeah.
Parent disk. So
you can do that too. For instance, right? You just go here. And you just rename this, which is the one. You can just rename it to anything that you want, because this doesn't change anything. The only thing is what is inside that script is important.
Yes.
Okay, you can rename it to anything.
I'm actually thinking from the perspective of being able to follow the script clearly.
Yeah.
By having two scripts with the same name, it increases the possibility of mistakes being made, right?
Okay, I probably.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people will know I'm creating parent disk for Azure Stack HCI. You can do that too.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. All right. Now, so that's how I do this, right? So basically, copy that, create a master, something like this, copy that over, and let's say you have a test lab that you want to set up, create, rename that folder into something like jwhite-test lab, and that's it. You're good to go. So from here, you can start, running your, MSLab scripts, for example, right? So while we'll let that, keep running in the background, here what we'll do is, since I've already created one more environment, so we're going to spin, we're going to start the deploy script here. Any questions until here before I kick off the deploy script?
Yeah, I think it's clear for me. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what we're gonna do is start the, I think one important thing which I forgot to tell you. Sorry to kind of come back again. Before you create the parent disks, so let me go back to this folder. So this is how prereq, okay? So this is how it will be. For instance, okay, I'm gonna remove this. And I'm going to remove this because I accidentally clicked on create parent disks from this folder. So hopefully it lets me delete. All right, good. So, okay. Now, when you first download the ISOs and when you download your scripts, this is how your folder is going to look like, right? Now, the most important step in this thing is to make sure, let's say, for instance, you want to change your domain name and all of those things, right? So this is where you need to edit this. Before you create the parent disks, make sure you change your parameters. For example, this is where you change that lab config and just put domain name equals, let's say lab.net. And then a colon, and what's the other? Okay, so these are the various parameters that you can change. Okay, it's there in that master MSLab script. So when you download your MSLab scripts, it will have a default lab config.ps1, and if you go inside that, it will have a master content. So under this, these are all the various switches that you can play around with. So in my case, I would need domain name and domain net BIOS, right? So I will just copy this and paste it here. Okay, so it is single quote. It's not a double quote. Okay, there's a mistake there. Okay, and a semicolon. So before you create parent disks, make sure that your lab config is updated with these details. Okay, because when the VHDX file is created, it is actually created with this particular domain name domain name and the NetBIOS name. And even the credentials, for instance, you want to change the credentials or whatever it is, make sure that you put that information right here. I think you can change that even after you create your what do you say? Especially the password for the like the lab admin here, domain name, name and password. But that you can change it later as well. But as a best practice, I would start everything from making sure that all my passwords and everything is here. Right? Okay, so I'm not going to change. I'm not going to save this. All right. Any questions here? So I know there's a piece which I kind of left, so it's important. So I haven't tested changing the domain name. I will test it out and share the results with you probably tomorrow if I get some time. What happens if you change your domain name? Does it work? I don't know yet because in our environment, it's like we just want a working setup so that we can demo something to the user, right? To our customers, right? So we just keep everything default. But I just spoke to Jaromir just before coming here. He said, yeah, this is the way to change it. All right. Any questions before we go to the test lab and start firing the script? Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Before that, I want to show you my environment just to make sure. So if you see, this is my physical hardware, which is the Dell PowerEdge R640 server. It's pretty beefy. It's got about 768 GB of RAM. It's got about 12 TB of storage space, space there, and it's got a 8260 dual blocks in there, so it's pretty powerful. Okay, so but this just a single physical server, single one node physical server is catering all of us. For instance, myself, the entire team. Okay, so this is how, see how this is where the true value comes in, right? So it's an optimal usage of your resources. So you, for example, you can just, Noel, probably for your environment, just have a one beefy server and let everybody use that environment to spin up their, up their lab instance.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we're doing here. So the one that you're seeing here that says JY, that's JY is for Giant. So these are the virtual machines which are already running. So there's a DC out there, there's a management system, there's a WAC gateway. Okay, and as you can see, this folder, where is that? Okay, JY test lab. This, there's no VM under this name, but as soon as you create the deploy script, you will see that showing up there. Okay. Any questions before I fire the script?
No, looks good.
Okay. All right. So let's click on deploy. All right. So again, this is something that's going to take some time because it is going to deploy the operating system, but not so much. This is pretty fast. I would say maybe about 10-15 minutes, if I'm not wrong. I haven't timed it around that. But the biggest piece is the create parent disks. That takes literally about 1.5 hours. As you can see, this is still running here. See, we just kicked off before we started this meeting, and it's still running. Okay, I'm sure it's going to continue to run. So, so this is where it starts asking me for the external switch. Remember, like I said, internet connection is required. So in my case, let's say for instance, if you're a Hyper-V, it has a configured switch where it can talk to the, it can go out and talk to internet. You select the corresponding switch for that. Okay, so in my case, it is lab switch external. Okay, and that's it. It starts looking for the DC. So the DC has a VM that's as part of the create parent disks. It creates that VM files, and then it starts deploying that VM from this step. Okay, so waiting for Active Directory JY test lab to be started. I know, Ko, you are having some issues getting beyond this step, right? So we'll have to get Jaromir to look into your environment to see what's going on out there, and we'll get that looked into. Okay, so like I said, I'm not the one who's coded the script. It's Jaromir and team. So we really have to get it, get help from them to get things up and running for your lab. Okay, so let's wait for this to come up. Okay, any questions here? This is a good time for good questions and some discussions.
Cool. Just thinking of your environment, is your nested VM going straight out to the internet? Are you going through anything?
Yeah, straight out.
So
connect directly to a external switch.
Okay.
In his environment, in my case, I have 2 switches. I think in Ko's environment, it's just one switch, if I'm not wrong, right?
Correct. I only have 1.
Yeah. So that's why it defaults it and doesn't even ask you an option to select the switch. And you can ignore this warning, this error. It is just that, since it's a virtualized environment. So yeah, so you can, just ignore this error. Just, don't worry about it. Okay. So one important thing that I totally forgot to bring up is this particular one. And a help me to troubleshoot this. Oops, not this one. Oh, okay, this one, yeah. Okay, very important to keep this switch to true, because your Hyper-V tools are not going to work if this is not enabled. This is nothing but the moment you turn the switch on, which is nested virtualization is going to true. It basically you're making sure that it's mimic a Hyper-V environment for your VM. Okay, so this is the most important switch to keep in mind, because if you don't, then for me it so happened that I somehow missed this because I copied a wrong lab config file. And for me, the VM provisioning was not happening. In fact, I started off with AKS, creation of AKS cluster. And as part of AKS cluster, AKS creates a control plane VM, right? And it just wouldn't start. It's because the Hyper-V tools were not enabled because of this particular switch. Okay, so that's an important thing. Okay, all right. So as you can see, it started authorizing the DHCP. It's configuring NAT on DC so that it can talk to the internet and so on. So these are and the RSAT features are being installed. So all of that. So yeah. So there's a time for any other discussions. Still waiting for a few things to run. But if you can get this up and running in your lab, right, it's just going to be a one-time effort. But if you can get this up and running, it's so much easier. Okay, because we do, keep doing this day in and day out, because it's so much easier for us to bring up a lab. So generally, what I do as best practice, once I, create my cluster, let's say, for instance, this one, right? So basically, my environment is these 4 VMs. Okay, so these are the 4 VMs that I'm using in my environment. As you can see, my memory is consumption is high. It's about 96 gigs for the Azure Stack HCI nodes. So what I do generally is, even though script can help me, but I still don't want to keep waiting for my script, because it's still a time-consuming effort, right? So what I generally do is, after I create the cluster and before I register, so I create the cluster, keep everything ready, and the last step in the entire setup is register your Azure Stack HCI cluster against an Azure subscription. So before I do that, I create a checkpoint for all the VMs. Okay, so tomorrow, let's say, because we are all just playing around, right? And something we mess up and something doesn't work and something gets into a very, very weird state, right? So that's when I would just roll back to these checkpoints. So as you can see, the checkpoint. So I've created a checkpoint called Azure Stack HCI clue creation, which means just after the cluster is created, I've created a checkpoint. So in fact, all of my VMs have a similar checkpoint. So they're consistent. So next time, if something happens to my lab, all I do is just revert to my checkpoint and then kick off from there. So much easier.
One stupid question, right, is what is the minimum prerequisite, right, in terms of resources to build this lab, right, in a basic default configuration?
All right, so let's go here. So this is what it is.
16 gig RAM. Free space SSD. But didn't mention number of cores that are required.
Yes. So this is basically you need an SSD, right? In your laptops these days come with SSDs.
Yeah,
But the only challenge with laptop is my laptop today has 16 GB, but it's not a usable 16 GB because it's some processes already being consumed, right? So I may have just about 10 gigs remaining or 12 gigs remaining, right? So although you could do it, you could run these scripts on your laptop, but I wouldn't recommend unless your laptop is very powerful, something like Alienware or something like that, where it comes with minimum 24 gigs of RAM.
I can do that with RAM, not an issue, but the core I'm limited to 16 cores. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. I think yeah. So 16 cores. Remember, it depends on what you're running. For instance, right? That would not be sufficient at all if you're planning to run any service. For instance, you could just probably be done with creating a cluster, and that's about it. And if you look at my environment, I have AKS running, I have Azure Arc for VMs running. There's a whole bunch of clusters running, which is consuming crazy amount of CPUs and memory, right? Yeah, so that's why.
But the default on your script when they create the VHTX is up there on, right? The
that
I
can change. I can change that.
Okay.
So all I do here is go into edit. Before I click on deploy, I go into edit, and then can you see this memory startup bytes? I can change this. I can say 128 GB if I want to. And this applies to all the VMs, including this VM. Okay, it's not very graceful way of doing it because I'll tell you, I don't want a management system to be carrying 128 gigs of RAM. Honestly, not. But unfortunately, that the script is designed that way. But what I do is I don't change any of the memory parameters here. What I do is once the cluster is created, I will just come here. Let's say, for instance, this one, and right click and go to settings. So much easier to do because it's a Gen V2 VM. You can just you can change your memory and processor at runtime.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Okay. So I just come here and change it. It's so much easier.
All right. Thanks. Thank you.
No worries. So as you can see, while we are waiting for that script to run, already it has provisioned JY Test Lab, Azure Stack HCI VM2, and DC is provisioned. So it is already doing the work. So let's see this one. Yeah. So it actually joins to the domain. That's where you mentioned that domain name in your lab config file, right? So that's where it starts creating your domain join job when you run through the deploy script. But again, this is not so time consuming. I think if I'm not wrong, probably about 18 to 22 minutes is maximum it takes, but it's pretty fast. So, I talked to a lot of customers, right? So one of the things is many customers feel that, oh my God, even for me to get an experience of how Azure Stack HCI OS is, should I have to buy minimum 2 nodes? Because a lot of customers are under that apprehension, right? Even for me to do a POC, not really, right? So this is where we can even though I sometimes wear a seller's cap, but sometimes I tell my sellers as well, saying, guys, let's not just tell the customer just to invest money just for POC, they can do without it, right? The intent is to look at it at a long-term perspective, right? Let's look at it from a long-term perspective and see if the customer is happy about it. I'm sure we will make them happy by running it on a virtualized environment. They can play around with it. They can register this against an Azure subscription, do pretty much anything and everything that they want, minus the hardware management, like monitoring and managing the hardware using the Windows Admin Center plugin. So that's the only thing that you will not be able to do. But otherwise, they can do anything from this environment.
Hey, Dan.
Yep.
The deployment looks pretty fast. It's almost done already, I think.
Yeah, it's almost done. So I know if it works right, it just it's so beautiful. You can get it up and running very quickly. In fact, I think it's almost through, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, it has such a super powerful server behind there.
Yeah, it's also got to do with the server that's behind it, right? So it's pretty good one. That kind of helps to speed up things. But we got to get this up and running in your lab. Cool. We'll work together to get this going. So I think that's still running. So it's basically the DC job that's going on right now. As you can see, the WAC gateway and the management systems have come up already. But they're on off state right now. But most of the jobs are being run on DC right now. So yep, there you go. Got the message saying it's all provisioned. That's it. You're good. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 machines provisioned. 2 of them are Azure Stack at CIOS. 1 is a DC. 1 is a management VM where I'm going to run all my my create cluster scripts and everything. Or after the cluster is created, I'm going to use my management VM to launch my Windows Admin Center and do my day 2 to day end operations. And WAC gateway is a Windows core operating system. So that means it doesn't have a UI, but that's where you remotely go and install your Windows Admin Center. And I'll show you how that's done. So let's click on A. So it's going to power on all the systems there. That's it. We are done. And next thing is to create a cluster. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch the management system because that's an important system that I need to create the cluster. Okay, so once this is ready, I'll keep this script, keep this page handy. So if I go in here, okay, deploy Azure Stack at CI cluster with PowerShell. Okay, so this is the page that I would keep it handy. So it's because it has a bunch of scripts that I need to run. So basically, you can start executing these scripts one at a time. So one important thing to note here is that the lab config is so important, right? I have the right lab configuration to actually deploy the script. So I make sure I have a look at it once again, just to make sure I have all the prerequisites. And once that is ready, then I will So this is how my environment also looks like, as you can see. And then he says DC. So the reason is, in this case, the management VM is not set up. It's just the Windows Admin Center gateway. So that means that, in this page, they're trying to do everything from DC. But in my case, I'm doing it from the management system. Okay, that's the only difference. So in PowerShell, paste the following code to install the management tools for Windows Server. Keep the PowerShell open for the next two things. So this is where you actually deploy this. You run this script from the management station. Okay, so let's see if the management station is ready. Okay, it's still getting up. Partly because I think it's pretty low on VM on the memory. So let's see, what's the memory on the system? Ah, there you go. You see this? We got to change this. Yeah, it's just, I know it's a dynamic memory, but still sometimes, it's I usually go as fixed memory, so that way it's faster. Otherwise, you'll have a very slow system here. I don't want to turn it off right now because it's still doing the Hyper-V settings. Right, so how much time we got there, Ko?
Don't worry. We got time.
Particularly can extend as long as you want.
Yeah, okay. Okay, then it's going to restart. No, it's not. Good. So as you can see, this is already domain joined, right? So corp is a domain, and it has the. So I'm going to log in using the credentials which are specified in the lab config. So since I have created that DNS forwarder, so basically this system can connect to the internet, I think, if I'm not wrong, hopefully. It has to do some configurations there. Okay, I think there's some problem in the script where it didn't pick up the. Okay, so let's see. It'll take some time. Sometimes it takes time. Yeah, it says sometimes it's go true. Lab config. This DNS forwarder is true. Okay, let's wait. Okay, so we'll have to take a look at it. I'm not sure why I didn't get the internet connection for this. Maybe I think quickly take a look at yeah, there is a vSwitch lab as attached to this. It is in trunk mode.
Then
Hmm.
the nodes are the created nodes are getting IP from the DHCP server. Is it?
Yes, they're getting the IP from the DHCP server.
Yeah, in this scenario, who is the DHCP server?
The DHCP server is DC. So if I open DC here, so let me open this one. Okay, go to connect. Yeah. So looks like I think there's some issue with the internet connection. So I know we are running into this problem. The switch is kind of that we are using sometimes, doesn't get the. So there is some problem in our lab with the DNS resolution. Sometimes, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. So I'll tell you the challenge that, for instance, right? So if I open this one, JY management, I think it's already open. Yeah, you see this? So it's connected there, but if I look into this network, yeah, okay, it's using the lab switch. So, so let's see. I think what we can do is probably. Sorry, I don't want to be wasting your time troubleshooting here. Let's see quickly if we can do this. If not, then I'll take it offline. Switch. Switch external. Let's see. Oops. Yeah. So generally we keep toggling between this switch and that switch because there's some challenges there. So let's see if this can get the internet connection going. Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right. So anyways, so let's leave this problem. Let's tackle this later. So, but what I wanted to show you is where you can start running the scripts. Okay. But it's important that, we need that internet connection to, get it going, because when you start running the scripts on the management system, you will also start, basically, it'll also start downloading some files, libraries, as and when it is required. So it's important to have internet connection for your management system where you're going to create your HCI lab. Okay. Okay. So let's go here. All right. Okay. So now go to this, and so this is the first script. So I would just follow this document because I'll tell you, I've followed this document at least 10, 15 times and it works. Okay, so you can take my word for granted. So just run the script. Oops, it's still running, right? So that's an older one. So you come here, go to PowerShell. Oh, okay, so I think it's because of the memory here. All right, so let's do one thing. It's simply not responding. Okay, I can't copy paste that. That sucks. So let's see if I can maximize this. Launch that. These are all Hyper-V issues, the Hyper-V manager. Sorry guys, I know it's waiting and watching, but that's how live sessions are, unfortunately, especially the ones that are, you're trying to set up a few things. So yeah, generally this setup takes time. Not as bad as, so, when you start probably AKS and stuff like that, I think fairly okay. But these things, creation of a cluster does take quite a while, as you can imagine. Basically you run through all of this. So basically, you run through. Okay, sure. So you got to run through, install the PowerShell module, the management tools that are required, and plus perform Windows updates. So as you can see, right, we have the Azure Stack HCI OS deployed, but you also need to start doing a Windows update for your nodes. That's where these things run. So in my case, I don't have Azure Stack HCI 1 and 2, 3 and 4, because it's just a 2-node cluster for me. Because as you can see from here, right, just 1 node, 1, 2. So I just need to skip that part. All right. Okay. So let's see. Okay, it's come up. All right. So let's see if you're lucky to launch this thing. All right. Okay, so this is, it's going to install the Hyper-V tools. And what's the next one? The next one is perform Windows update. I think this is going to fail in my environment because it doesn't have internet connection. Yeah. Yeah, there's a problem. Sometimes the environment doesn't get the required DNS thing from the lab, And that's when I end up with this problem. So we'll have to talk to generally we talk to our lab guys and, figure out what the issue is, but I'll have to kind of dig through that.
Okay, now you're updating the PC, right?
I am just enabling the roles.
Oh, okay.
See the script, right? Unfortunately, we won't be able to run the remaining scripts. As you can see, this is a Windows update, right? It needs to connect to the internet. Looks like I think none of my systems have connectivity now, so I don't know, some challenge there. Okay, so I mean, this is, I mean, we could do this, we could do this all day, right? Go on and on, but so generally, if I have to walk you through this, right? I think you guys got an idea about how to start your system, right? Now we're in a stage where you need to deploy the cluster, right? So this is what this page is all about, how to deploy a cluster. First, you do the Windows update, right? So basically push your update. And in my case, I won't be able to show it to you right now in this call, unfortunately, because of the issue that we're facing with the internet connection. Once you do this, and then basically you run through the script to check what versions of the window, Azure Stack HCI OS is, and it's all copy paste, right? So it's very, very simple. Just you have this page up with you, just start copy pasting these scripts from your management system. That's it. So there is a bunch of, these are all the prerequisites before you kick off the creation of the cluster, like, config basic server settings that you need to do. And then the configuration of the networking. So, and then once you are through with this, all this, right? So that's when you go to the step of creation of this cluster. Okay, there's all validate networking, the switches, to create the jumbo frames, enable jumbo frames for that. And the RDMA, the similar thing that you go on today with when you launch your Windows Admin Center that says create cluster, right? There are a bunch of options that you have, like networking. You need to define your storage traffic, management traffic, create a vSwitch, enable S2D. All of that is actually the same thing, right? So once you're through with this, that's when it'll go through the step of creation of a cluster. Right. So again, same thing, copy paste into a management system. That's it. It creates a file share witness. If you want to create a file share witness, this is a script. If you want to create a cloud witness into Azure, this is a script. So basically, it'll ask you to log into your Azure credentials and so on. Okay. And configure your cluster networks. And live migration settings for your Hyper-V. Okay. So, and then enable storage spaces direct. It's all of these steps are today there in your, the WAC way of doing using the UI, right? Which I'm going to show you later, in some time. Okay. Okay, and creation of volumes. So you have scripts for everything. Makes your life so much easier. You don't have to do it on your own, right? It's pretty automated, including the registration of Azure Stack HCI OS to Azure. Okay, so, and that's where it's, these are additional things like, creation of a, pool and all of that. So I'll probably not go into that. But one other thing that I want to show you is it's basically, okay, this one. Go up. Okay. You can either choose deploying your cluster through PowerShell, or through Windows Admin Center. Okay. Now, it's the same process. right? It's a GUI driven, so it tells you, all the things that you need to do. Even it's every step is documented with screenshots. I would say just blindly follow this document. Okay. Any questions here?
So far, okay.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so even if the network connection was up and running, I couldn't have sat through all of these commands and executing because it would be boring for you. Okay, so I would say, yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? So it's like, people are going to be sitting ducks and watching scripts to run. Doesn't make sense at all. But basically, I kind of wanted to set the stage for this class today, in this session today, to basically, how do you prep your system? How do you, set up your environment? And then get into this stage where you start creating clusters. So you have two options to do. Either you can do using the PowerShell, or you can you can use the Windows Admin Center. Either way, you can just go ahead and create your clusters. And then you have other scenarios as well, like we discussed. So that is where you, if you can just, you can go here as well. So let me see if I can show other. Set up your Azure Virtual Desktop. Even that's available. If not, you can go into this scenarios under MSLab, and you have tons of these scenarios. Even for instance, you want to create your AKS cluster, right? The only thing is your lab config, you need to make sure that your lab config matches. You don't have to replace your lab config. You can still keep that same, but there's something known as scenario.ps1. So what is in it? What I would just do is, go into scenarios.ps1 and copy all of this, and then create it into a PowerShell ISE. So copy paste that into PowerShell ISE. So all of this, you actually do it from the management station. Remember that, right? So because anything and everything that you do using management station, your creation of your AKS, anything, right? So even if you want to do it through UI, you will use Windows Admin Center. If you want to do it through PowerShell, you copy this particular script under the scenarios folder. So what you do is do Control M. Okay, this will collapse all this stuff. See, as you can see, it runs through the job of creation of a 2-node cluster, right? Register the 2-node cluster against an Azure subscription. So how do you do this? Just copy paste the script. Simple. Copy and then paste the script into a management station using PowerShell. As simple as that. So register Azure Stack HCI to Azure, install the required Azure Stack HCI PowerShell modules, prepare your subnet for your static deployment, because this is following the static way of deploying AKS. Then you set up your AKS, and then you create an AKS cluster. Okay, and then you onboard your AKS cluster to Azure Arc, and all of these steps, just copy paste. There's nothing much to run, nothing much to do. Okay, even you can actually create a simple app like a voting app. Even that is available here. If you want to, you can just run through this script. If you don't want to, you can just skip this script. Skip these steps. Like I said, at any point of time, you want to say, hey, you know what? This is doing like, it's completely automation, and I don't understand what it's trying to do, right? So if you don't want to use the script, you can just probably stop at this, which is basically create 2-node cluster and run and do everything from here manually if you want to. Any questions here? Do you think this was useful?
Yeah, I think it's really useful, but I think we need it needs to be, or there's a explanation for all the parameters, right?
There is an explanation for all the. In fact, everything is commented, so you exactly know. So there's no, it's like I can keep talking about this for days, right? But unless you do it yourself on your system, it's no way you can, understand this completely. So I would say get cracking. And first, before that, I want to make sure that, Co's environment is up and running, so that's where we need Yaromir's help there, and see if he can. Unfortunately, he's down with COVID, so once he is up, I think then we'll have his environment up and running, and then Co, I think you should be able to share your experience with your team as well.
Oh man.
Cool. All right, guys. I don't want to keep you guys holding for everything. So if there are any more questions at all, if not, we can probably end this call.
Thanks, Jane, for the great sharing. There's a feedback form actually pressed into the chat window. Feel free to share your feedback to Jane, and he will actually reply. And also, we're looking forward for the coming sharing from Jane. Thank you very much, Jane.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for your sharing today.
No worries, no worries. Yep, my pleasure as always.
And we are looking forward for your coming session.
Sure. Yep.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. You have a good night.
We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
All right. Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.